And here I am with the co-founder of Lutra.ai, another awesome AI agent platform. Welcome to the show.
Hi, JJ. Thank you for welcoming to the show. I am Jiquan Ngiam, one of the co-founders at Lutra. Super excited to be here talking to your audience about no-code AI and my experience and background.
Awesome. You have a tremendous background. You started really early on at Coursera as one of the earliest employees, went on to Google, spent over 4 years there working on the Google Brain and others, and now you founded this company. Can you take us way back to Coursera, how that might have started, and bring us through that journey? Because I think a lot of your experience leads you to what you're building today.
Excellent. Yes. So my journey in AI started in 2009 at Stanford when I was doing a PhD program with Andrew Ng, my advisor. And it was when deep learning wasn't the sexy thing. It was actually the sideshow. And when you go to the conferences like NeurIPS. But it was really interesting to many of us there. And for us, we realized that the bottleneck in getting advancements in the space was having more people understand and work with the technology. So we published the first online machine learning classes in 2011. If you did that and you ran into errors with the assignments, it's my fault because I wrote most of them, not all of them there. And it was really exciting to see that hunger and appetite where people could learn online and just develop new skills. And that made me actually leave the program to start a company. So I ended up starting Coursera with Andrew, Daphne, and a few others and building it up from the ground zero, making education more accessible. And it was this magic moment where because of education, you gain a new superpower. You can now do something that you couldn't otherwise do before. And that was really gratifying to me. So we went through that, onboarded lots of schools, lots of courses. You've seen Coursera grew, the MOOC era grew over the 2010s. Subsequently, for myself, I got hungry and back into AI again because in 2017, 18, I started to see the potential of this technology really take
Which,
off.
what, 8 years ago? You got
That was
back
many
into
years ago.
AI?
It's I know it was around when the Transformers paper came out, actually.
Okay.
So we started to see the I think Richard Sutton called it the bitter truth, where once you figure out the right architecture model and start scaling it up, it starts to work, it starts to grow. And then we started seeing the possibilities of having it connect to different modalities all happen in the attention is all you need paper. And that was around when I joined Google Brain and it was working on applied research there. So I spent many years in Google Brain. My broader team worked on large models. I did a lot of work with Waymo on self-driving cars because I found it really fun. And then about 4.5 years in, I was like, the technology is so awesome. We need to get this into more people. So around then, I left and then started a startup. This is around when ChatGPT came about, GPT-4. And it was just fascinating because for myself, working in the space for so many years, we all saw that step function shift in GPT-4 being able to reason and program and code. And now we're all seeing that through, especially this year and last year. And so when we started Lutra, the question that we had was, could we take that ability of that model to reason and code and give it to more people so that they could then automate more and do more in their lives? And this a bit stems from my past experiences in two ways. One at Coursera, where I was primarily in charge of engineering, product development functions. It was always challenging to try to support the other teams like customer service, marketing, sales. And the engineers are always busy building more product, making more infrastructure go. But we know that just a little bit of their time would unlock so much value for the other teams. But it was really hard to prioritize.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's number one, right? Can we now use the technology to empower them? And so number two is, wait, is this a new way to give people superpowers? Can AI be a superpower that allows you to do things that you could otherwise not do before? So the number two in there. So what we're building at Lutra is down that direction. It's like a future, I think, of when AI is something that helps you do a lot more. It
hmm
can help you become the one that codes on your behalf and execute things.
Yeah. I want to get to your startup, Lutra.ai, pretty soon, but I want to stick on your
Mhm.
background a little bit more. So
Yes.
you've been working with AI for a long time, much longer than I am. I'm only about 2 years into it, really, once GPT got popularized, right? Like many others. What have you seen from the advancements of AI? Like you were working early days with Waymo and whatnot. What was AI able to do then compared to now? Is it like 5x better, 10x better? Talk us through about those early days of AI 5, 7 years ago.
Wow, I'll try to roll it back. Maybe I'll probably like 12 years ago. So the critical pivot point, number one, the first pivot point was something called AlexNet. Not most of you might have heard about it. The Fei Li, Dr. Fei Li, like a big name in the AI space, she created the ImageNet dataset. And for a long time, people had this challenge with it. And the task is to get an image, classify it into one of 1,000 categories. And a lot of them were like specific dog breeds, specific things like airplane cars, specific cars. Um, It's really hard. Like training models to do that back in the day was so hard that it was like one of the massive challenges. Then around 2012, AlexNet came about, and suddenly we're able to train deep models. This is deep convolutional neural networks to solve that problem. And the interesting part of it was that the techniques and the architecture was actually the same architectures as what Jan LeCun came with in the 90s, and for convolutional neural networks for OCR. So just scaling up the models. So that was the first unlock. Hey, taking an old technique or architecture, getting it right, throwing compute and data at it works. The next unlock came around, I would say, the mid 2010s, like when there was a first paper by Banadal on transformation, attention for translations.
Okay.
Then after that, there's paper on transformers, where the critical part is here is that we figured out how to model long sequences. So sequence modeling and like predicting the next token, next word in a sequence was a hard problem. How do you say, if I give you a full sentence, what should the next character, token, or punctuation be?
Mhm.
We used to train recursive neural networks or recurrent neural networks. Then around then, the transformer paper came out, and it showed a very, I say, uniquely designed architecture that scaled well. That's critical. That could take in a lot of data and could take in a lot of compute,
Mhm.
and it just kept getting better and better. And so that became another unlock where in the language space, we used to design models to like predict whether something is it's a proper noun, it's a part of speech type things and all of that. And we started moving towards no, you don't have to do that anymore. You just predict the next token, and that allows you to do almost all of language modeling. So that came about. The first signs of it working really well were that we were able to generate Wikipedia-like articles with the right HTML and the right structure, but
Mhm.
not the right content.
Mhm.
No, then we scale it up, started getting really good. Now, the third thing that I think happened in the last 3, 4 years is multimodal. So I talked about images, I talked about text. The next thing that happened was that we realized that we could take the image models or images, break them up into little pieces, like little patches, what they call them, and treat the image as a bunch of words, essentially,
Wow.
and run it through the same transformer model, and it works.
Wow.
And then now you start to stare at it and go, wait, can I put the image and the words together in the same input? And now be able to do things like visual question and answer. Here's the image, here's the question, what's the answer? And the
Mhm.
answer is actually yes, you could do that now. And so over time, we started converging on a few things. One, the way we design and architect the models have landed on this architecture transformers that's really good. Number two, it has allowed us to combine a lot of modalities together, audio, image, text now, and more. Soon, I think actions and everything too. And then number three, it has proved to us that the more data, compute, and scale we throw at it, the better it gets. And so that trend has just taken off. And I would say if you'd ask me like if I put a number on how much better are models today versus 5, 10 years ago, like it's like 10, 100x improvements. It's
Wow.
incredible amount of improvements. It's just like mind blowing. It's like it's something that I wouldn't have expected to see get so good so quickly in the time I've been working on this.
That's really exciting. There's a lot to talk about. I wanna get to your startup, and then we go into the future and what we expect in the future later in the episode. Before we get into startup, one more question. Self-driving cars, Waymo, you have a lot of experience there. I think personally, they're gonna start to become much more normalized in the coming years. What is your theory? What did you see with Waymo? Do you have confidence in a self-driving future soon, or how soon may that be?
I have very high confidence in a self-driving future. I have a daughter, she's 4 or something, and I don't know if she needs to know how to drive when she grows up, honestly. And honestly, like a machine that drives is probably a safer driver because it's always looking out all the time, right? It's never get sleepy, it's always like paying attention even at night with LiDAR and all. Now,
Yeah.
what I saw at Waymo was, I think a few things in there. Number one was working with them, there's a high bar for like safety,
Mhm.
like pedestrians and everything, extremely high bar for caring about that. And I think that's number one critical. So it's not going to be like a overnight step function because the need for a high bar for safety, a high bar for quality, because the risk is so high when you do something
Mhm.
wrong. It's very important to meet that first. And so I think you see the technology for self-driving car take a little while more to roll out, but it's definitely going to roll out. Whereas if a GPT makes an error in the language it produces, no one cares, right? You can just correct it.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, I think, is over time, we're seeing the same story play out. So if you look at papers in the research community on self-driving cars, maybe about 5, 10 years ago, a lot of them were like, let's build a model for perception. just a LiDAR and image in. Where are the cars? Where are the people? Then let's build a model for behavior prediction. Where are these people going to move? Where are the cars going to move? Okay, now, based on that, let's build a model for planning. Okay, how should we move if we make those predictions? Now, over time, what we've seen, similar to the rest of the transformer world, is we should just go end to end. We should just take in the images and the LiDAR if we have those, go all the way to the end of predicting the future of the world all at once and what we should do. And the more end to end you can go, the more the model just picks up on all the nuances in the middle, as long as you have enough data.
Hmm.
And in my mind, I think that trend is holding up, it's looking great. Tesla is probably the best platform that you see this happen, where they have so much data and they're going end to end, just from images.
Hmm.
It's going to take a while to get it all into 100%. Everyone's ready for this,
Yeah.
but I have no doubt that that future is coming.
Yeah, I think that future is going on a awesome trajectory, but also there's a lot of trust and things that people are going to have to get over to start using it. Similar to that, like AI. I think
Hmm.
both of those generally using AI in personal and work, talking to robots, all that kind of stuff, driving with letting robots drive for you. There's a lot of trust that we need to get past as consumers to embrace the technology in the coming years, right? And I think humanity might be experiencing more change in a smaller period of time than ever before, which is also a hard thing for us to do, but also really exciting. So I'm very optimistic about it personally. How about you?
I'm optimistic. I think it's going to be hard for some people with some jobs, but overall, like it's going to be like what we've seen in the past. Like lots of jobs in the past was agriculture, the bend were backwards, plowing the fields and all. And now barely on that, robots are running that, and we get food is you get food whenever you want it. Just go out there and press on a button on your DoorDash
Yeah.
or Uber Eats, it shows up, right? And so you can think about that as like the comparison. Now, a lot of computer work we're doing are like plowing the computer and like manually doing things. But in the future, you press a button, it does work for you. How cool is that? So
Yeah.
that's the mindset I have, and it's going to be difficult for some,
Yeah.
big change for humanity. But I think humanity nets out positive in the bigger scheme of things.
Let's hope so.
Yes.
All right. Let's
So,
move on to your car company, Lutra.ai. You're a very smart person. You could have done a million things. Why did you pick this company and this idea, this problem to solve?
oh boy, I'll tell you how this started. And there's a story that I don't think most people know, but since you mentioned that it's a bit crazy to start do a startup, right? So when GPT-4 first came out in around March, April, there's a few days I was like, let me try all these things out with it. And this was before AutoGPT actually. So I was like getting it to do all this crazy stuff and program itself and self-reflect and reflect on its programs. It was just working. And it was insane. It kept me up for 2 nights, I think. My wife was like, you should go to sleep. But then what I found was that just so much unlocked in there. Like it was doing things that it couldn't otherwise, I couldn't imagine otherwise doing before.
Hmm.
And this is only like the worst it ever be.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's like there's only a few times in my life where I see a big sea change in technology, like the .com era, startups, .com websites and all, big sea change. Mobile is another one, mobile apps development. And I was somehow involved in each of those, but not in a big way. And by then I see this AI sea change coming too, right? It's going to be a big wave of how we reimagine how we interact with computers, how much more they can do on our behalves. And so for me, it's just like the moment was right. I like to get in there, be in this part of the sea change and see that happen. And for me, that opportunity was really interesting because if we could start taking these abilities of the models and giving people new superpowers and new skills that they couldn't have done before, that'd be amazing.
Hmm.
And we started to see things that started to work in very early versions. Go read the internet and get this data for me, like deep research stuff. We all had that prototypes a year or 2 years ago. But now, as we are coming to develop that, we said, what if we interconnected all your applications to this? How would that look like? How would that change the way we work? So we're starting to get into that, and it's really exciting to see all that come together. I would say the hard part of it is because the technology is so new and nascent, it changes so quickly.
Hmm.
The quality and cost equation changes every 2, 3 months on us in a big way. And so keeping up with it, figuring out how to use it in the most effective way has been a challenge.
Yeah.
But it's also really exciting because you're always feeling like we're at the forefront of what we're working on here.
Yeah. I want to come
Yeah.
back to those challenges, but first, what is Lutra.ai? What does it do? What problem does it solve?
That's a great question there. So it's a agentic AI platform that it allows you to make a lot of your work with AI in the loop. And so what happens is that on Lutra, you build these playbooks. We call them agentic machines
Hmm.
that essentially take data from some application system you have, maybe your Gmail, maybe your spreadsheets, uses AI to transform it in various ways, and then puts it in the different system. And
Mhm.
you can create automations like this that get more and more complicated. Go to Reddit, figure out who's talking about things that I have a product for, draft
Mhm.
a reply to them, go like that. And so it's a bit, think of it as automation in the new world of AI,
Mhm.
where my feeling is that before this, there was a lot of low code, no code platforms where you need to drag and drop and visually program things. And in the future, where we're building towards is an AI is going to be the one doing all that work for you.
Mhm.
And you can just tell it what to do, and it goes off and programs and create automations for you. So
Mhm.
that's what Lutra. So it helps you automate lots of business processes using AI in the middle across different applications like spreadsheets, emails, web research, CRMs, and all.
Excellent. Is it a B2C or B2B platform?
So it's a more like a prosumer
Okay.
platform with an enterprise play too. So
Okay.
as a prosumer on it, you can get on, you can self-serve, sign up for it as an individual and pay for that. And then as you go into teams, there's a way to get your whole team on it. So you are building this
Mhm.
Playbooks machines that is private to your team. And then at the enterprise level, we help enterprises bring in custom integrations. If you had your own database and you wanted to connect it to Lutra,
Mhm.
that's a possibility, and that we have through a plugin system.
Okay.
And it's actually really amazing what you can do with that.
Yeah. Now you're
Yeah.
saying you're gonna connect to these systems and you're gonna pull in the data and then use it to do things with, but how can we trust that the data that is pulled in is safe and trustworthy in that way?
Yes, I think there's the trust in the system and trust in AI is a big question, right? How do we know what it's doing, right? And part of it, the mistrust, I think, stems from a few places. One is, are these models learning from my data? I feel like, are they going to take my data away from me? On that one, it's a
Or
bit
to
of
someone
simpler.
else or something like that?
Exactly. On that one, the answer is a bit simpler, and that think of models as I think of them as calculators on words. That's just like a calculator isn't going to steal the numbers and math. It's a calculator on words. It's just going to take words in and produce words out.
Mhm.
So you can self-host models, you can get models that are not connected to a major frontier provider. As
Mhm.
long as the provider of it, someone you trust, the models don't naturally learn things on their own. They're like
Mhm.
calculators on words. And number two is a lot of the models tend to be a bit unpredictable. Right? You put in something today, put in something tomorrow, output looks a bit different. Like it makes a different decision. So the question there is how do we create a sense of understanding and reliability of what it's
Mhm.
going to do?
Sure.
So one thing that Lutra does differently from a lot of other platforms is that instead of having the model just predict an action to take, what Lutra does is that it produces software code that runs and then produces the output. So you can actually see the actual intent and plan of the code it produces.
I
And then
see.
once it's done with it, you can later take a look at the playbook code that it wrote that you run over and over again. And in the
Mhm.
middle, it might call other AI functions too, but you can actually see very clearly how it's getting the data. So it's not going to hallucinate emails. It's actually going to see, this is where I'm pulling the emails from.
Mhm.
And you can see precisely how that happens. So those are a few things that we do in there that help reliability. But it is a problem I think the industry needs to get around and figure out how to really demonstrate security and reliability.
Yeah, I really like that
Hmm.
that you are able to demonstrate reliability in that way because you're totally right. You give it a prompt and you can get a different response every single day. And so, how does a business scale with continuous different responses without that reliability? I think that's a missing part that most don't have.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to maybe give us a small demo?
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to do a quick demo here where I'm going to show you how Lutra works with emails. And then I was thinking of what to demo and I was like, hey, JJ is a podcaster, does a lot of emails. Let me try to do something that's relevant to him. So this morning I created a bunch of sample emails. So I sent to myself, to my demo account. You can see I'm predicting like these are probably emails like someone like you might get, or someone you get emails about, hey, people want to be guests, they want to have sponsorship opportunities, they want to sell you space to record your podcast studio, ton of these things. You got to sort through them. And it's not just podcasters. Right? Everyone has emails. If you're in finance, in logistics, shipping, you just get everything in your inbox. And it's hard to
It's
figure
true.
out
It's a
what's
problem.
important, what's not important.
Hmm.
So let me show you how Lutra works. So I'm going to give Lutra an instruction here to go through those emails.
Okay.
So let's see this. Hey, Lutra, could you find the emails sent to me in the last 2 hours and categorize them into if they are a podcast sponsorship, someone that wants to be a guest on the podcast, listeners reaching out, or something else? Can you put the categorizations you find into a new Google Sheet? Let's see if that's good.
Great. So for our audience, our audio only audience, we see a very much like a ChatGPT interface where you can add your own prompts in there and but it is connected to the Lutra.ai system in its own interface, but it looks like ChatGPT in that way.
Yes, it's a conversational interface. And in a second, you'll see the difference in the conversational interface. And the instruction I just spoke out was something that was fed into the system as a prompt.
Okay.
And so you can just see that running now. So what Lutra does is that it understood my instructions that I just gave it, and then is now creating software to figure out how to do this task of email categorization. And then it's going to figure out how to create a Google Sheet. You can see that being created. If you're watching the podcast video, you can see it being created on the fly right now. And then you can see it also reading emails here, right? So it's going to say, good, let's go through my emails, okay, figure out how to get them, how to create a Google Sheet, how to classify them, and then put it all into the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Right? So
we
you can
see
now,
like a split screen with the Google Sheets on the right-hand side, and then the AI is processing, reading the emails, and I assume is going to start inserting rows into the spreadsheet that we see on the right-hand side as well, but still all through the Lutra platform. It's almost like an autopilot in that way.
exactly. And what you see here is a few things in here. This is chat. This is actually a really rich chat experience where the side pane here is not just a chat conversation, but it shows you details of what the machine is doing. So you have this full introspection on every single step it takes. How is it doing it? The progress it's making, and the outputs, the intermediate outputs is showing up as well. So now it's going to append the rows in there. You can see this.
Now, it inserted all the data into the spreadsheet that it created for us. It gave us the email subject, the sender, and the category that assigned to it. And now it's letting us know that it's completed and asking us what we want to do next with some ideas of things that we can do next.
Yeah, so let's go on and give it another instruction here. And then could you create a new worksheet in this spreadsheet called guests? Now, for all the categories that you found as potential guests, could you extract out the name of the guests and where they work or where they're affiliated with, and then add it to that new spreadsheet? Mm-hmm. Worksheet.
Nice. That was a good one. Guest research in this way, allowing me to see the potential guests and if they'd be a good guest or not for the podcast, I assume.
Yes. And then next step in there is, can you go research about them, add it to the spreadsheet? Can you do
Yep.
like a perplexity style research? So this is
Yep.
all different things you might want to do, right? And so as those trials running, maybe I'll show you what's going on beneath the hood, right? We talked about reliability.
Yeah.
That might be on your mind. What's going on? This seems to be running. Right? Is this going to work?
Yeah. It
Um,
is just running for us. It's a funny thing because now that the AI is doing the work for us, I keep finding myself in these moments of, I got to wait 60 seconds. What do I do now? Do I listen to some music? It's so nice to have the AI doing that work for us finally, but it's like, all right, what do we do in this downtime of 45 seconds?
it's funny that you mentioned that because I use a lot of models to do a lot of work. So I use it to write documents and stuff.
Yep.
Sometimes it takes minutes to run. And I go, if I'm at home, I actually go get a drink. I sit
Yeah,
down, do something
exactly.
else, I run an errand. This is great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let me show you what happens here. This is all like sample data I just pulled from that. So you can see
Sure.
that this is pulling out names like no. And then if you went to the emails in here, let me just pick up one random one like this
Great.
one. Like, so you can see this is like pulling out the data and putting information in there, right?
Yep.
And so now you can say, hey, for the guests in here, could you do some web research about them and add another column on their background and some questions I should ask them? Like this, right?
Awesome. And
So there
so
you
I
go.
think one thing here is you're taking this in steps. And is that just easier for the AI to process step by step as we think through it rather than just hitting it with everything all at once?
Yeah, so this is interesting because the AI, when it's going through every step now, the question is it doing the step correctly?
Mm.
You could give it Lutra all the steps. We see people do that, and once they get really familiar with the platform, and they just go blow through all of that. But we recommend early users get familiarize themselves to make sure that you're showing it step one, okay, just do it right. Step two, you're doing it right. Step three, you're doing it right. Then
Mm-hmm.
at the end of it all, maybe after this one is done, what you could do is to ask it to then compile all the steps into a playbook
Mm-hmm.
so that in the future, when you run this again, you don't have to run through the steps again, right?
I
And that's the
see.
critical part in
That's the
here where you can
reliability, the do it over and over kind of thing.
exactly. So over here, I'll show you what's happening here first. And this is really interesting because it's asking Lutra to do more things. It is very connected to different systems. So we just
Mm-hmm.
went from Gmail to spreadsheets. But over here, we're doing also web research where it's looking up Sarah Murray's background experience career, it's doing a Google search, reading all those pages, getting the data, re-summarizing it here,
Yeah.
and then putting it back into the spreadsheet for you.
It's very
Right.
smart out of the box. Like the other platforms can do this, but you need to give it a lot more instructions and a lot more tools to get to the level of depth that you've just provided with that single prompt.
Exactly. And then, we ask it for processing questions for you to ask. It came out with that, right? So all of that in
Mm-hmm.
there. So it's doing all that processing in there. And
Mm-hmm.
so now the question there is, we can run it on all the rows. It shows you dynamically computes how much it will cost you, how long this is going to take, and
Nice.
everything. So there's a lot of dynamic understanding of its own process.
Mhm.
But the one that's really interesting is this button here, which is, can I save this away as a process, right? And this is
Mhm.
very critical in that most AI systems don't have a way for you to teach them process reliably. And that's a critical part. Even if you have the best knowledge about how to do math PhDs, you still need to learn how a company wants things done, how a team wants things done. So over here, this is a process that's going to create a Google Sheet, fetch emails from some hours, bring it back. You could ask it to change this up to use the same Google Sheet. But if you like what you see here in this process, Lutra then looks at the entire conversation we just had, picks out what's good, throws away what's bad, and then figures out how to compile that into a repeatable automation that you can now schedule, run, or give to someone on your team member to say, hey, go with us. You can now start using that.
Excellent. So this is something that I could say, "Hey, do this every day at 9 a.m. Check my inbox, categorize, do the potential research." Could we take it a step further and say, for the people that would be good fits by X, Y, and Z, then email them to see if they're interested, something like that?
Yes, you could. I would just show you the integrations we have. So it's like a stash command in here. You can just pull
Oh,
up that
beautiful.
like Airtable, calendar. You can Gmail, you can create email drafts. We don't have auto sending yet. That's something that we're working on to make it safe. You
Yeah.
can there. But
Yeah,
you can
that's
make.
definitely a sensitive one.
Yes, exactly. So drafting things is something that we support right now, and we feel very comfortable because the user did a quick send, but it gets you all the way there, right? So Outlook is a big one. So Outlook is one that many platforms don't support. We have that too.
Yeah.
CRMs, HubSpot. So what you want is just like a prompt away. But let me show you what
Mhm.
this actually looks like in practice, right? So when you create a playbook, it's no longer a chat. It's, hey, this is the steps. These are the instructions. You can read
Yeah.
through it.
And what we're
Very
seeing is like a
legible.
list, like very simple
Mm,
workflow steps, whereas in other platforms, you might see a big visualization with many steps. Lutric makes it really simple and just says in plain text, here's what we're going to do, this step in each kind of sub steps, and then we have the main steps.
exactly. And maybe the last thing I'll show you here is that for the power users, and sometimes power users like, I just want to go there and tweak something, or I
Right.
know what I'm doing. We let you drop into the software.
Okay.
So this is
So
the
you
software.
can
Yeah.
expose the code right there.
You can put the code right there. So you actually come in and here and say, you know what? I would like to
So you're
call
looking
the
at the code generated and you're adjusting, what is it, the email subject or something like that of that specific
yeah,
section of that workflow that you run.
yeah, the
Awesome.
USA, something like this. And then you can say something like this, right? You can change things up, whatever you want. You can save it again, and the steps will actually update to reflect how you change the code, right? And then you ask me about scheduling. I can click on that. You can schedule some things there too. So that's what Lutra is in a nutshell.
Very
Allows you
cool.
to automate a lot of things. Very dynamically generated
Very
UX
cool.
on that.
What, like, how far can you take this? From what I've seen, it's a very simple way to get up and running and start automating, not intimidating, great for first time users, pro consumers that want to get in there and do stuff. But for those that need complex workflows or like very multi step workflows, where would you say, like, all right, that's good for us, or here's where maybe it just doesn't make sense anymore, kind of thing? Where's that line for Lutra?
Yeah, so I think if you're working with workflows, and we think of it in terms of the complexity of the software you're producing,
Yeah.
something that can be achieved in a few different applications, moving data around, transforming it once or twice across data applications. Lutra is really good for that.
Hmm.
Playbook is really good for that. Now, when you start to do really complicated things, you might want to create multiple playbooks. There's playbook one that does this, playbook two that does this, playbook three that does this, and then there's something else that orchestrates across them,
Can
right?
you call out other playbooks, essentially?
Yes, yes. You could cross-reference them and everything. So there's a way to build them up hierarchically, right? Start
It's like a
thinking about that.
multi-agent system in other ways.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
in some ways, we think of the playbooks as like little agentic
Yeah.
AI agents that are very reliable.
Hmm.
Because underneath the hood, the playbooks are again using AI to extract data and process data.
Hmm.
And maybe as an example of one playbook that we built over the weekend that's running right now is it's a Reddit monitoring playbook. It reads all the Reddit posts that are coming out all the time, and then it looks at our help documentation in
Hmm.
Lutra and says, "Hey, is Lutra able to solve this post?" And it says, okay, yes. Okay, now is the post a self promotion post or is it a someone asking for advice?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Okay, then now it says, okay, now then it alerts us, hey, you should go and here's the first draft. You might want to go and reply to
Gotcha.
that thread, right? And so
Yeah.
that whole process is something that we have as an example of a more complex one that we have automated as well.
And that's a very helpful like workflow for most orgs, right? Just
Hmm.
social listening, when to interject into those conversations and even preparing a draft to help with that based on your docs could save a lot of people a lot of time.
A lot of things, yes, exactly. And I think the critical thing is that we design it to be very relevant, right? This is not just like producing an answer. It's actually looking at our docs and saying, hey, based on our docs and what they're asking, can we actually help?
Hmm.
And only helping us, prompting us to respond when that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's really important there.
I think right now, founders building in this industry, it's a very difficult time. We alluded to it earlier just because like things are changing so fast. There's so much shiny object syndrome going around of, oh, this new thing that does DeepSeek, it was so hot last week, it's still popular, et cetera. But as a founder, how do you stay focused on capturing the attention today, but also still building towards your mission long term, especially now in these times where things are changing so fast? It must be a very hard thing to do.
It's a hard thing to do. I would say that it's one of the things that we struggle and grapple with, right? So, for example, on that very concrete things, when we first started off working on this project, models had an output token limit of 4K or 8K.
Okay.
We did all these hacks to get around that so that we can get more tokens. Today, like some time ago, we tore out all the code and threw it away because we didn't need that anymore.
Wow.
Output and input token limits are much higher.
Yeah. So all that
So,
engineering time just,
it's just,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
just being over time, we learn and we became much more thoughtful. So one thing that we don't do is that we don't do a lot of our own model development because there's so many people in the world doing that. So we
Yeah.
focus on how to use it, how to integrate it.
Hmm.
And so focusing on your differentiation, and your differentiation needs to come not from what else someone is doing, but from what you bring to the table. For us, is how we develop the code execution system, how to make it fast, how do we make it secure, safe, reliable, how do we do integrations, make it easy to integrate.
Hmm.
The UX of this, very dynamically showing people what's most relevant at the right time.
Hmm.
We're just really focusing on where we're differentiated, I think is the key.
Hmm.
We do experiment with new models when they come up, but with the eye to understanding where they are rather than to necessarily race to productionize it. And the reason for that is a lot of times the models that come out today, they only might become usable later
Hmm.
from a quality, cost, limits point
Hmm.
of view. So for example, we experiment a lot with Gemini Flash 2
Hmm.
from Google. Actually worked really well for us, but only today did they announce that it's generally available. Right. So we're always ready to switch over very easily. But at the same time, just trying to avoid too much over engineering just to work around deficiencies in the models. So we know that some parts are deficient, they'll get restored, and just focusing on where we bring value to the table.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
there a model that you're using for underlining systems today gets improved or changed tomorrow? Could that have things stop working in your systems tomorrow when that model changes? Is there that level of disturbance in these models, or are you past that point? It's we have enough in-house tech where the model's not going to ruin
Mhm.
your ongoing automations.
No, so I think there are two things in that. I think one, when you use a model, you can always usually pin it to a particular version.
Hmm.
Even the frontier model providers do that. So you can say, I want that version. Don't give me something else.
Yeah.
But they do deprecate it after time to time.
Hmm.
Number two is that we are at a maturity in the stack where we have experimented swapping out Anthropic's Sonnet 3.5, which is used in some places,
Hmm.
for GPT 4.0, and it just works.
Hmm.
As long as we have the right evaluation data sets, the right
Hmm.
test sets, that's actually very easy decisions to make there.
Hmm.
And so over time, we build up those evaluation test sets. Our prompts have become better over time. And critically in Lutra, the system also self-reflects and recovers.
Hmm.
So we actually see it that when we switch models and anything, the system is very graceful at figuring out how to resolve situations.
Hmm.
And so this also helps a lot.
With a agentic platform like yours that's being asked to think and do tasks, what model do you like best out of all these that you're seeing the most success with?
It's a great question. I think it depends on the task at
Sure.
hand. So the best model, right now, I think our main workhorse is Sonnet 3.5.
Okay.
It's still that, actually, surprisingly. Even with
Yeah.
R1 and O1 and all that, Sonnet
Yeah.
3.5 is still our main workhorse and
Yeah.
everything. But we are starting to switch to Gemini Flash 2, for example, for
Okay.
data extractive tasks,
Okay.
because we're finding it really good for that. And the flavor changes every now and then. And then we use GPT 4.0 every now and then for some specific things. If it gets into it's unable to debug itself, sometimes we switch models so that it's able to get out of a hole in there. Because
Gotcha.
different models have different ways of thinking. Yeah, so
That's
that's
smart. Very smart. Where do you see Lutra going in the future? Right now, we still need to talk to it. While we create playbooks, we can schedule it. Is there a future where our future becomes more like driverless cars, where these cars are driving themselves, and like we're just getting in and out of those cars when we need them, or like where do you see this world going of AI agents and these platforms and systems? And they could do so much for us, but how do we as professional workers use them in our everyday?
And I'll answer the more proximal question, like where would this go, I think, in maybe a year or two, which is
Okay.
very, very more close to us. And then maybe after that, where the future is very hard to predict.
Yeah.
But
Especially
in a
now.
year or two, I think the very clear thing is that adoption is hard. And it's hard because prompting is very awkward. And this is not how we were trained to use computers. I was trained to use computers by say, click a button, something deterministic happens, and I'm guaranteed my output. Now I type something into ChatGPT or even Lutra, it's like almost spinning the wheel and am I going to get what I get?
Mhm.
Over time, we're seeing that yes, you're going to get what you get, and that's going to go up and up. People like that.
Mhm.
But then that mode of operation is very foreign to people, right? And for example, the first thing it changes is that if something doesn't work, if the button doesn't work, you send an email to support and say, your app is broken, fix it. But in AI, when a model gives you the wrong output or the text it produces or image produces is not right, you say, oh, fix it. This is what I want instead. You give it
Yeah.
feedback. And that's something that most people are not used to. And they don't even realize sometimes that they can do it.
Mhm.
And that's like number one, right? So adoption there. So the number two is that because it's asymmetric, some people will figure this out very quickly and get really good at it. And
Mhm.
so for us, what we are trying to figure out is for the power users of AI, how can they figure out what they're doing right and be able to quickly share it with the rest of the organization so that for most people, it feels more like a one button click with minimal thinking,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, for the exam demo I just showed about email categorization and speaker research,
Mhm.
whatever I typed was pretty natural, but
Mhm.
then it's very somewhat there's this like barrier. Can I even try that? Do I even type it in there? Right. But if I were to send you, JJ, the playbook I just created and say, hey, here you go, start here and
Mhm.
tell the machine if you can make any changes to it, it'll change it up for you.
Mhm.
Much easier.
Mhm.
So where we think in a year or two is that we'll see, we hope and we'll see systems built around that thematic sense,
Mhm.
empower power users to help everyone else. I think custom GPTs was down that line a little bit,
Yeah.
but I think we'll see quite a lot more. I think we need a lot more down that line that
Mhm.
way. And so we're working
Templates,
down that.
essentially. Take the imagination away, just let them know, "You can do this. Here's a good starting point. Now you make minor modifications from there."
Exactly. And then over time, as we learn and the systems get better, they learn processes and everything, we can start giving them more and more autonomy, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
So it's more like every morning, I like my emails categorized and speakers identified. Now, I don't
Mhm.
have to tell you all the specific steps of giving the spreadsheet, do this, that, do that. You've seen me work with the AI for half a year now, and you've seen how I like to do it. You can now predict what I like to do.
Mhm.
Right. And once you have that personalization layer in there, then I think we can start doing that next thing that you are alluding to, which is can I just give it a more ambiguous task to work on? Now, the hard part of it is that I don't think that's going to work day one out of the box for everyone
Mhm.
because each of us have different preferences, right? Like the way I like to qualify a lead is different from a different company,
Mhm.
just completely different. And so if we imagine that, oh, day one, just qualify leads for me, that's never going to work. There needs to be an onboarding step, a step in which the AI learns about preferences, learns about how you want to do something. And then after that, you can have the rapid acceleration of getting more and more things done. So I still think we're in like phase one of things right now. Then phase two will come after that, where it's a bit still fuzzy in my mind how that will play out. But I'm hoping that based on everything that you've created on Lutra, for example, Lutra can go, oh, you're going to do that? Based on what you've done at all your playbooks, this is what I recommend you do. And you go, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. And it
Mhm.
starts building it out. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you see is there a world where it's like, "Hey, this is my role, and I have essentially created playbooks for all these tasks that I'm supposed to do, and then I'm just almost a supervisor to those agents going off and
Yes.
doing those tasks for me each day, reflecting, reporting, making minor adjustments to the prompt, getting that higher quality, but thus my output triples or whatever because I have so many tools working for me at that level?"
Exactly. I completely, that's how we view the short term future,
Yeah,
where people just have, we, be, essentially, we become managers of AI.
exactly.
The AI is doing work for us. And then we tell it to that different, that was good, that was bad. And then it can improve itself, right? And then
Yeah,
different mechanisms how to improve itself.
yeah.
In fact, maybe on the example here was I mentioned about this Reddit monitoring thing. It was drafting reply for us, but the replies looked really bad,
Yeah.
AI gen replies. And then we are like, hey, go fix your replies. And then it went into a conversation with itself. I had to show you the conversation actually. If you want to see that, let me try to fix it. And I was like, okay, that doesn't sound good still. Let me try again.
Yeah,
Try again. And
yeah.
at the end of the whole process, okay, this is a prompt we should use that gets pretty reasonable replies.
Nice.
And that's like 5 minutes of itself, just like going back and forth and trying to figure out a way to make a good reply.
Yeah.
And then I look, yeah,
It's a quick upgrade though to get that
yes.
level of quality, and that's just gonna get faster and faster, those
Oh yeah,
loops.
totally. And
It
everything here is just limited by compute time, right? The
Yeah.
faster compute gets, these iteration cycles is going to shrink, and it'll be
Yeah.
quite interesting
We
after that.
I feel like we could talk for a long time. There's a lot to then you go downstream of with all this need for compute, what happens with our energy grids and what happens with limited resource. We can go really downhill of all this stuff, but we're running low on time. I want to have ask you one more question and then we can get you out of here. My question to you is for folks that may be intimidated by agents, by AI, but they're professional workers, they want to stay with the latest trends. What tip do you give to them to help them take that next step and start to integrate some of these systems into the work to help them not only adapt, but thrive in their professional lives?
Yeah, so I think the biggest tip I would have is go try things out, like just experiment. Don't expect it to work. Just try it out for the sake of seeing how it works, understanding it. A lot of the technology, a lot of the things out there are pretty new. They are new to the point that sometimes they don't really work out of the box that well. We at Lutra are trying to make something work out of the box really well for you day one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our goal. So do try us as well. But doing that alone is really important. Number two, I think, is a lot of products often have a paid tier that give you a lot more capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started off using AI, ChatGPT, I was on ChatGPT, was it, I think Plus they call it, and
Yeah.
I had GPT-4. My friends didn't have GPT-4.
Yeah.
I was seeing a different world from them, just
Yeah.
completely different world. And so sometimes if you find that a service has a paid tier that's not very expensive, just try it out because
Yeah.
that might show you a very different world from everyone else that's using a free thing.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you get a different view of what's possible and what you can do.
Yeah.
So I think that's also very important to take a look at. But apart from that, I think the try it out. I think
Stay
many people are
curious.
worried to connect their accounts to that, but create an account, connect to it, see if you can put in some dummy data, play with it. And once you get a hang of it, and because you don't expect it to work the first time, be iterative with it. Right. All
Mm-hmm.
of these systems need a little bit of iteration.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So just try that out too and then get an intuition there. My expectation is that in this year you would see all this technology get easier to use.
Mm-hmm.
I expect that prompt engineering as a thing will slowly become less and less of a thing to worry about. The
Yeah.
reasoning models will
Mm-hmm.
do the reasoning, the engineering for you.
Yeah.
So it's a really good time to get in because a lot of the technology is going to get way more accessible and easier to use this year.
Yeah. So stay curious, stay
Yeah,
investigating, trying things out. Don't
yeah,
be intimidated by it. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised of what can happen.
exactly.
Excellent.
So,
For our folks that want to learn more about Lutra.ai, tell them where they can learn more or how to get started with using your platform.
go to Lutra.ai, sign up. We have a free tier that you can play with the platform and see what it does, connect your accounts, play with it. Find us on Twitter or LinkedIn, Lutra.ai. Just go over that. You'll find us there too, where we post updates about the platform. Yeah,
Awesome.
and then
Awesome. I will put the links to those in the description of this podcast or video. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. Really wonderful getting to know the platform and thank you for your time.
thank you, JJ. It's really great to be on the show here with your audience here. Hope they found it exciting and interesting.
I think so.